I need to do one of these recaps. We're gonna have to transition into the dreaded face cam. What am I doing here? Is it video capture device? Video capture device. Ah! Alright. I should have like prepared this. Okay. That's a little bit too much of me. We're gonna shrink me down. How small? Is that good? Alright, so I wanted to do a recap of the Boston Cube Party, which was this past weekend, and as usual, I had a ton of fun there. My own cube, the Sci-Fi Cube, was in the main event, and I always love having my cube in the main event, but I'm not here to play my own cube. I can do that kind of whenever, right? I'm here to play other people's cubes, and why not start with a cube that I really can't play whenever, and that's the Cascade Cube. The reason that you can't really do this one whenever is because, well, it uses different rules. So I guess actually I could do it this way, right? Paste deck, update current pool, and it's Maelstrom Nexus. This is the emblem that everybody starts with. So I'm just putting this in the sideboard so people can read it. So Maelstrom Nexus says the first spell you cast each turn has Cascade. And that's the emblem that everybody starts with. And it's incredibly powerful and incredibly game warping, and yet it still kind of feels like magic. So basically, the idea with the Cascade Cube is, how are you going to break the emblem, right? Because everybody's going to be doing broken things. It's just, how can you do things in the most broken way? And one of the things that you can do that's very broken is tutor up 0-drops. You don't really want to have 0-drops in your opener if you can avoid it, because, I mean, they're not particularly good to play. If you play them as your first spell per turn, you cascade into nothing. This cube is also really about sequencing, timing. You have to make sure you do things at the right time or bad things are going to happen. So pack one, pick one for me. I took a card that costs, or has a mana value of 4, but I can play it for 0 mana, and that card was Snuff Out. And Snuff Out is an excellent card in this cube because not only is it 4 mana's worth of a card that you're playing for free, but one of the other things that you can do to break the Maelstrom Nexus emblem, because it's the first spell you cast each turn has Cascade, is casting stuff on your opponent's turn. So the more you're able to play one spell, presumably at a discount, whatever, on your turn, and then one spell on the opponent's turn, that's how you really start to leverage the Cascade value from the Maelstrom Nexus. So that is a big part of my plan. So I have Snuff Out, Force of Despair, Dismember, Shieldred's Edict. Yes, cast for free, get a 3-drop, exactly, Wacky. So it's also important to talk about the zeros, right? The zeros in this cube are kind of brutal. So there's Mox Tantalite and Soul Talisman and Lotus Bloom. Those are the 3 quote-unquote pieces of power because, let's say you have no other 0-drop in your deck other than like one of those. Then if you play a 1-mana spell with the Cascade emblem, you guarantee cascading into basically Black Lotus or Gleemox or Soul Ring for free. So pretty absurd things are going to happen. Unfortunately, I did lose my first match in this cube to someone who had Ancestral Vision, and they had Lotus Bloom, and they had Mox Tantalite. So, effectively 3 pieces of power. During the draft portion, I didn't see any of the broken pieces of power, but there is something interesting that happened here, where I got past Mox Diamond and I got past Chrome Mox, and I just kind of looked around the table and I was like, how are people passing these to me, right? Like, this still has to be kind of broken, right? Even if it's like the bad Moxen instead of the Cascade ones. And I was very wrong. So first of all, let's talk about my deck a little bit. I ended up in this really weird deck, this black artifact deck, mono black as well, which is it's super sweet, but come on, mono black artifacts, that's not something that people ever draft. So I was kind of suspicious of the Chrome Mox already, just given the fact that it does have to exile a non-artifact card from your hand, and the fact that I'm playing an artifact deck means that a lot of my spells are not going to be basically, legal to exile or imprint to the Chrome Mox. Surprisingly, Mox Diamond was actually good, and it was good enough consistently. I hope so, Wacky. So anyway, I thought it was so funny. I went from the draft portion, right, where I'm like, how did people pass me this Chrome Mox? Then I went to the games where I actually wound up cutting it for a swamp, which is like probably one of the least exciting swaps you can make, cutting your, 0 mana thing that like gets you ahead on mana and whatever just for a basic, but I needed to do it. I can talk a little bit about the draft portion. I will say, so I started with Snuff Out. I took some other black cards early. The person I was passing to thought that I wasn't in black because I passed them in Unmasked, but thankfully I was able to cut black sufficiently so they didn't move in. I took a Quarry Steel Cutter. I had this Vanefire Border Post. Border Posts are also amazing in this cube. So Border Posts are really kind of niche cards. They're from Alara Reborn, and it's like a dual land that you have to pay 1 and return a basic to your hand to use. Otherwise, you can play it as a mana rock for 3 mana. But the idea with Border Posts is, you're basically putting a dual land into play, but it has mana value 3. So you still get to start cascading into really strong stuff early. That said, in my deck, I do have to be a little bit careful because I can hit stuff like Shieldred's Edict, right? And I don't really want to be hitting a removal spell on turn 1 if my opponent doesn't necessarily have anything in play. So again, you just have to be really careful with this one, really worry about your sequencing. And I have to talk to you guys, if I'm going to say anything about this one, I have to tell you guys about the sweetest thing that this deck was capable of doing. Because I had a loop where I could play Demonic Tutor every turn, and I did it multiple times. So first of all, I have Profane Tutor, right? This is my Demonic Tutor. So I have 2 zeros in my deck. One is the Mox Diamond, one is the Profane Tutor. A lot of the time you want your deck to be streamlined and only just have 1 0 in your deck and have that 0 be your best one. So every time you play a 1 mana spell, you know for sure that that's finding your best 0. But in my deck's case, it was actually fine to have 2. I was pretty consistently able to get both of them out of my deck, so it wasn't a big deal. And Profane Tutor, already really good if you cascade into it, right? It's just, 0 mana Demonic Tutor at that point. But then on top of that, you have Conjurer's Bauble, right? Conjurer's Bauble says, you sack this, you put up to 1 target card from your graveyard onto the bottom of your library, then you draw a card. So in other words, if you have Profane Command, and let's say you play, I don't know, Tiny Bones or whatever, and then you tutor up, like you cascade through your deck, you find the Profane Tutor, then you tutor whatever your best card is from your deck, then it's in your graveyard. Then let's say you have Conjurer's Bauble, you activate this, put the Profane Tutor back into your deck, now all of a sudden you're able to cascade into the Profane Tutor again. And you might say, okay, well that sounds good, but how is it a loop? Well, nice and easy answer to that one, of course, and that would be Lurrus of the Dream Den. And now every single turn we have sack Conjurer's Bauble, put Profane Tutor onto the bottom of the library, replay the Conjurer's Bauble with the Lurrus, get the Profane Tutor, and that was just disgusting. I assume that somebody's probably done this before in this cube, but the fact that I pulled that combo off, I didn't even realize I could do it until I was like mid-gameplay. I was like, wait a minute, I can Demonic Tutor every turn. And draw an extra card, by the way, at the same time. So that was absolutely disgusting. My deck was like it was kind of like, so obviously I have that combo, right? But then I sort of had 2 kind of components to the deck. Other than that, I have black removal spells, right? That's a lot of what I was tutoring up. I had Shieldred's Edict, Force of Despair, Baleful Mastery, Snuff Out. Oh, and I do have to come back to the Baleful Mastery briefly as well. And then I had this like artifact package, and this was frequently how I tried to kill people. I was a little bit skeptical of the artifact stuff. I didn't pick any of the artifact cards highly, but they were going so late and I just didn't have another color I was in. The first card that I took was Karn, Scion of Urza, just kind of thinking like, I don't know, I can just put this into any color pair, right? Just black X. And then after that, all of a sudden I'm seeing like the Iron Spider, right? Which is basically a better Steel Overseer. And then I'm getting Steel Overseer proper. And then I have Ravager and Vault Scourge and everything. Vault Scourge is so nice too because, whoops, sorry, that's not Vault Scourge, because you can play it on turn 1 and it, what was I going to say? Then it finds you like a 0 or 1 drop, but then when you're playing a 2 mana card, you don't cascade into it, right? Which, I mean, is true of many cards in this cube, but imagine if you were hitting this off your 2 mana spells for cascade. It would just be kind of a bummer. I did actually lose, I think, game 1 of round 1 because I simply played Vault Scourge on turn 1. I'm not, like, guaranteed to win, right? My opponent's deck had 3 pieces of power, but if I keep it in hand, it was my only black card for Force of Despair. and my opponent did go like Adeline and like have 2 other creatures in play or whatever by the end of turn. So if I had Force of Despair, I basically get to Plague Wind them for 0 mana, and I get like a 2 mana spell for free. One more thing I'll say, and then I'll talk about my sort of gameplay tech with this, which this was, I think, the best play that I made in the whole thing, so I'm excited to talk about that. But I had this Quarry Steel Cutter that I picked up early when I thought I was going to be Rakdos with the Banefire Border Post. I also picked up the Badlands. And I wasn't Rakdos, red was not really open. And I wasn't sure about the Quarry Steel Cutter, and I kind of thought, like, well, like, what are the chances this is really good enough? Quarry Steel was very easily good enough. Even though my mana fixing was mediocre, I guess Mox Diamond also actually fixes for the Quarry. A lot of the time you don't even need to worry about having red mana because you just like play a 3 mana card and cascade into this. But my mana was also just totally fine, right? I mean, being nearly mono black, very, like, this is the only colored pip in my deck, so it worked out fine. So now to talk about the best play that I made, which I was very excited about, even though it didn't actually result in me doing anything too exciting or fancy. And that was, so my opponent, again in round 1, with the 3 effective pieces of power, has Miri's Guile in play. So Miri's Guile is a little bit like a Sensei's Divining Top. They get to sort of scry 3 at the beginning of each of their upkeeps, except they have to keep all the cards on top. So my opponent scries 3, seems pretty excited about at least one of the cards they're keeping, and then plays a 1 mana spell, right? So in other words, there's an alarm in my brain going off saying, hold on a second, my opponent just was happy about what they're doing with the top of their library, and then they played a 1 mana spell. So there's, basically 100% chance that my opponent's going to cascade into a piece of power. And one of the funny things about the pieces of power, right, especially the 3 that my opponent had in their deck, is they all have Suspend. So while they're insane if you cascade into them, they're actually quite awkward if you just draw them. So you might be able to see where this is going, but my opponent has this Adeline in play that I'm planning on removing anyway, and I realize I can respond to them playing the 1 mana spell with the student cost on the Baleful Mastery to force them to draw a card to try to say, okay, you just reordered the top of your library. If your piece of power is on top, now I'm going to force it to go into your hand, and then you won't be able to cascade into it. So I was pretty happy that I thought of that. Unfortunately, I think their top card was like a land or something that they were just going to, cascade through and get out of the way. So nothing I could do about that. They did end up, finding the piece of power and crushing me. But, given that they had 3 pieces of power and I had 0, it was a surprisingly close, well, one of the games at least was close. The other one was not. Yeah, they must have played around it somehow. They next leveled me. But anyway, this one was super fun. This cube is amazing. Would highly recommend this to anyone. There's so much thinking. It's really deep. It's very novel. And there's good replayability. The first time you play this, it's really hard to be on like the highest kind of level of all the crazy stuff you can do with this. I sure wasn't, and I was replaying it. It was only by luck that I discovered that I had a Demonic Tutor every turn combo. But, very much would recommend the Cascade Cube by Zach Barish. Great guy, great cube designer, great cube. So with that, let's move on to the second cube. This one was my least favorite deck. This is a bit of a train wreck. I was not happy about this one. So like the first deck, this one we did end up going 2-1. Somehow we salvaged the 2-1 here as well. This deck was ugly, man. I don't think I drafted this very well, but also, like, I don't know, weird things were happening. Oh, yes. Yeah, the reason for that, probably Mayhem, is because Zach Barish works with Arena. But anyway, moving on to this deck. So this, I think, was the Limited Masters Cube. And so hear me out. First pick, pack 1, pick 1, I take Birds of Paradise, right? Birds of Paradise, I think, is like one of the most powerful green cards in this kind of environment, that you could find. Seemed like a reasonable thing to be taking. And then I think second pick, I took, I want to say Rancor. You might notice there are 0 Rancors in my deck. We'll get to that in a second. And then third pick, I want to say I took like a Bannerhide Crew Shock. And it felt like pack 1 was going okay for me overall. Here's the thing. So I know that I had passed some red cards, right? I remember that I'd passed like a Burst Lightning. I think I had passed an Abrade. Cone of Flame, I don't know if it wheeled, but if it didn't wheel, it was like a pick away from wheeling, like an 8th pick or something. I get this Cone of Flame. So I've passed all these red removals. I somehow still get this Cone of Flame. And I'm just staring at this like, this is like a plague win for 5 mana, right? Like, it's not going to kill everything on everyone's board every time, but Cone of Flame is super good. So I'm just kind of looking around thinking like, how is this still in the pack? Right, I'm the classic guy in the spot who's saying that, but like, you know, maybe rightfully so because it is a broken card. And then all of a sudden, yeah, exactly. At a very minimum, it is a 2-for-1, and it's just a great card. So all of a sudden, I'm in red because of this, and then I'm taking red cards, and as you guys might be able to see, red is not particularly open. But the weirdest thing about this is, so because this, you might notice, by the way, that there are repeats in this one. This cube is not singleton. It's like 4 copies of commons, 2 copies of uncommons, 1 copy of rares. And we, what was I going to say? We somehow wound up with both Cones of Flame. Arc Lightning is actually a common in this one, which means there are 4 copies of it. So this cube is like deeply toxic to like go wide decks and like, you know, a bunch of 1/1s. Right, so I'm kind of just praying that like whichever decks I'm playing against are going to get absolutely blasted by Arc Lightning and Cone of Flame, which did mostly happen. That said, some extremely bad things happened. So there's a weird thing going on here where, you know, sometimes your colors being wide open means you have a nice, easy draft, and actually that's a little bit of foreshadowing. That's what's going to happen in the next one, the Budget Synergy Cube. But sometimes your colors being wide open means that you end up in those colors, and the person immediately downstream of you also ends up in those colors. And that is really bad, because that means Pack 2 is going to be super rough for you. And that's exactly what happened for me here. And you might notice some serious issues with my curve, where I have 2 2-mana creatures and 2 3-mana creatures. And in terms of other ways to affect the board on turn 2, yeah, my curve is a freaking mess, man. I have Farseek, and it was like, Pack 1 still felt okay, right? Like, I was getting cards pretty late. I was like wheeling an Arc Lightning. I think that's what happened. I think it was like 8th pick Cone of Flame, like wheel Arc Lightning from the pack of the Bob or something like that. And then like I got some good cards, like I got this Red Cap and I got this Bloodbraid Elf, but I just kept seeing all these like 4-mana cards. The other thing too is blue was very open. Blue was super open. I was definitely like quote unquote supposed to be in blue. But here's the thing, even though half the table wound up in red in this draft, like you're giving me Cone of Flame almost on the wheel and you're giving me Arc Lightning. At some point it doesn't matter how open blue is if the red cards are just absurd, right? Like I just have to take them. That said, I did pass like a playset of Mana Wars, which was, it just felt horrible. If I have a playset of Mana Wars, I could probably do anything. Unfortunately, I didn't do that. So I think this one very easily was my worst draft, not just because of the way it played out, but I think I probably made a lot of mistakes in the draft portion. There was a lot of like, in round 1 as well, I played against Boros aggro with like multiple Bone Splitters, which is like terrible for me. Like my only out to Bone Splitter is a Braid, and I'm just like in this spot where it's like I have openers where like my curve starts on 4 and then I have to mulligan, and then all of a sudden I'm like mulling to 5, and then I'm like evoking Muldrifter on turn 3 and my opponent's hitting me for like 7 damage because I'm not affecting the board. We just had like a bunch of horrible things happen to me, so that was super rough. My mana was like kind of decent, question mark. Like I had Stomping Ground, Wooded Ridgeline, which is the same thing, but it just has to enter tapped, and Molten Tributary, which is the blue-red one. And I have double Generous Ent. Generous Ent is actually nice because I can ramp into it or it can fix my mana. And I have Farseek as well. Farseek was also nice. I can fetch any of these lands because it just needs to fetch a mountain or an island in my deck, and all 3 of my dual lands meet that criteria. But like, if I just have this deck and I'm not competing with anyone, I assume the draft goes much better for me. I wonder what the outs look like to Bone Splitter in this cube, because like just having the 1 Abrade was not going to cut it when my opponent has 2 Bone Splitters. But I did manage to hold on. I almost I think I did force a game 3 against the Boros aggro player who did end up trophying the pod. And then I actually 2-0'd both of my other matches. It wasn't super meaningful in round 2. I have a feeling my round 2 opponent was relatively newer. And then round 3, I was terrified of my round 3 opponent who was black-white. And remember, I'm red-green with a blue splash passing to someone, and then that person is also in my colors, right? Which means in pack 2, the person who was passing to me is getting absolutely hooked up with the Orzhov cards because we have multiple people downstream of them not taking any of them. And they actually wield a Lingering Souls. I have a feeling Lingering Souls is like one of the best Orzhov cards. So I was terrified of their deck, but turns out that double Cone of Flame, double Arc Lightning is pretty good against Lingering Souls and co. And they actually had a Tetsamok, and then somehow I managed to stabilize against it. I punted in a weird way and forgot that there was a prey counter on one of my dudes. I attacked with slightly the wrong creature, but just ended up not being a big deal. Now the last thing I have to say about this one is the Goblin Bombardment, man. The freaking Goblin Bombardment. This card did not start in my deck. If you look at my deck, I basically have no synergies with it. I guess I do have Murderous Redcap, and actually Murderous Redcap was pretty cool for me because I got to reinforce. So after the Murderous Redcap dies, right, it has Persist, it comes back with a -1/-1 counter. Now I can reinforce the Bannerhide Crucial onto the Redcap, putting 2 +1/+1 counters on it, meaning that it can die again and come back with Persist again. And this thing also has Scavenge. Bannerhide Crucial was kind of the MVP of my deck. I saw a pack with 3 of them. It's just kind of like a cursed setup, I guess, drafting a sort of limited cube like this in paper, because ideally your retail limited-esque pack never has 3 copies of the same card. Anyway, going back to Goblin Bombardment, so you might remember that I said I started the draft with Bop into Rancor. Yeah, so funny story, even though Goblin Bombardment basically has no business in my deck, during the draft portion I took it because I had heard of somebody comboing Goblin Bombardment with Forsaken Miner, which Forsaken Miner is the 1 black for a 2/2 that can't block, and whenever you commit a crime, you can pay black and return it from your graveyard to the battlefield, which is just super disgusting and unbeatable and completely uninteractive, and I just assume I have literal 0 outs to that. So I basically hate drafted the Goblin Bombardment, but then as I'm continuing along, I realize actually burning my opponents out is a real thing I could do. And putting Rancor on one of my guys sounds horrible. It's just inviting my opponent to play an instant speed removal in response. And I'm seriously lacking the, cheap creatures that I would need to have an effective beatdown plan. And actually the Goblin Bombardment did pull its weight and then some. Consistently, fizzling, stuff like my opponent's Lightning Helix or whatever, threatening to deal lethal to my opponent, whatever. And then very last thing I was going to say, I did really want to sneak in the Rancor because I have this 1 Gnarlback Rhino, which says whenever you cast a spell that targets this creature, draw a card. So, funnily enough, I think what happened was I was really hoping to have Arc Lightning and Cone of Flame potentially ping my Gnarlback Rhino for 1, so I can kill 1 or 2 things still and then also draw a card. I drew 1 card with the Gnarlback Rhino. It was not from Arc Lightning, it was not from Cone of Flame. It was fairly heads-up play, but also just kind of correct, and it wasn't as difficult to find as the Baleful Mastery. I Bloodbraid Elf Cascade into Burst Lightning. My opponent has no X2s in play, so I Burst Lightning my own Gnarlback Rhino to draw a card, which, I think it was the correct line. It was kind of funny to do it, but never got to live any of the dreams of this deck. This deck was, I could happily forget about this one. Hey, Ermath, good to see you. Alright, so deck number 3. This was my sweetest deck, right? Mono black, artifact, demonic tutor every turn with a loop. No contesting that. Now, deck number 3 was my most powerful deck. This deck was, and I'm not saying better than demonic tutor every turn, I'm just saying relative to the field. And so this deck, 3-0-6-0'd. I even punted one of the turns in my finals and it didn't matter. This deck was absolutely absurd. We went pack 1, pick 1, Timeless Witness, pack 1, pick 2, Restoration Angel, And then I think pack 1, pick 3, I took Evolving Wilds, just because there was like nothing that excited me from that pack. And then 4th pick, I want to say I took like Bone Shards. So we're really like meandering here in this draft, right? Like I would love to be green-white, right, with a Resto and a Timeless Witness, but I'm just not really seeing the cards that I'd like to see for that. And then all of a sudden, I don't remember what it was. I want to say it was Declaration in Stone Wheeling from the first couple packs. Like, this is a pretty nice one, and this card just wheels to me. So then I'm taking that, and then now all of a sudden I'm getting these green-white duels super late. I also have like a Cogwork Librarian that I took pack 1, like during those picks where I like wasn't really seeing anything. And then I think pack 2, I want to say I'm spending my Cogwork Librarian on Jade Light Ranger plus Ordinary Foods, but man, my deck was just absolutely busted in this one. We just have like all this +1/+1 counter synergy, of course, like that's the main kind of theme of the deck. We have this Conclave Mentor, we have this like Metastatic Evangel, but I also have Kiral, and Kiral is like deceptively disgusting also in this deck, because almost every single card has a triggered ability somehow, which means including my non-creature cards, so like Captured by Legax, Touch the Spirit Realm, Conclave Tribunal, like everybody has a trigger. So I'm just copying like all these triggers with Kiral when I can. It was more of a hypothetical than the way that it actually worked out in gameplay, but it still was quite disgusting. So now some highlights in terms of plays. There was, I guess first I'll start with one highlight, which was my opponent, round 1, is playing this absolutely disgusting self-mill deck against me. And I'm like in this spot where I'm like basically dead to anything that they do. They have I'm at 3 life. They have Atris, which is a 3/2 menace, so I need 2 blockers for that. They also have Creeping Tar Pit, so I'm just dead to that. They have whatever the demon is, the 4/5 like Flying Trample that mills 4 cards and loses you 4 life. Hopefully Airmath can remember the name of that or something. They have that one in hand, and then they have this like flashback card in their graveyard that makes like a 1/1 rat for like each creature card in their graveyard, and they have like 10 creatures in their graveyard or something. So I'm just like insanely dead. But yes, Mind Rack Demon, thank you. But I managed to cobble together an answer to everything. So I have 2 blockers for the Atris. I have Hanged Executioner in play, which is like, I think literally my only answer to whatever you call it, the Creeping Tar Pit. So I have 4 mana up for this. And then I have Declaration in Stone in hand to exile like all the tokens if they make all the rats, and the opponent, I like already played Deck in Stone and then Timeless Witnessed it back, so they like know that I have it. And then I have Touch the Spirit Realm to exile the Mind Rack Demon. So somehow, miraculously, they're like still at 20 or something too. Like they're at like an absurdly high life total. I think that actually I might have made 1 attack and it was like a mistake. It was an epic game, absolutely epic game 1. And like somehow my green-white assertive deck is like on the back foot the entire time. I'm trying to cobble together all these answers to not be dead in any of the various ways that they can kill me. And then we kill them. The opponent starts looking at their cards in library. They count them. They have like 7 or 8 cards in library. They've played the Mind Rack Demon. Now all of a sudden they're at like 3 or 4 cards in library. And I had to Touch the Spirit Realm to perma-exile the Mind Rack Demon, but now instead I get to channel the Touch the Spirit Realm on the Mind Rack Demon, forcibly mill them for 4. Boom, we just won a game by decking the opponent with our green-white aggro deck. Probably can't say that too many times. So that was definitely the best game that I played with this deck, that is. And then round 2. So round 2, my opponent has not 1, not 2, 3 sweepers versus my creature deck with 17 creatures. So you might think, I mean, if anything can beat this deck, which is like absolutely nutted, how about a deck with 3 sweepers? And maybe there's theoretically a way I die to it, but I sure didn't die to it, because I have Timeless Witness, and I have Woodland Acolyte, and I have Sun Pearl Kirin and Restoration Angel, and basically I can just make it so, yes, you're sweeping my board, but it's like, now I like effectively have a Gravedigger, like Gravedigger my Gravedigger, and then now I'm like flickering my Gravediggers, and then like gross things are happening. So that was kind of a rough one. That match was like pretty close to going to time. Actually, both my round 1 and round 2 opponents, after having like really drawn out and epic game 1s, basically just got mana screwed and died game 2. So unfortunately, pretty anticlimactic game 2s this time around. But man, my deck was so sick. Like, how do you not love that? The like ETB looping, like, you know, insane inevitability, +1/+1 counter synergy, like copying triggered ability synergy, just a super souped up deck. So absolutely love this one. It was insane. And then yes, now going back to round 3. So again, my opponent's 1-1. I'm assuming that I have an edge because my deck is insane and I am 2-0 at this point. And my opponent is color screwed. They're playing Izzet, but they only have access to red mana. And they have played like Hordling Outbursts. They're like attacking with all their 1/1s. I block. I don't remember what I blocked with, but my creature was like a 2/2. And then they have post-combat, like, I want to say, is it Steam Blast or something? Whatever the adventure is on like the 2/2 Flying Prowess Otter from Wilds of Eldraine. So at this point I'm thinking, okay, they probably don't have... They've already played like 2 or so like Lightning Strike effects, right? And they've now Steam Blasted my 2/2. And I'm like... I'm just staring. I'm getting kind of impatient. I had some slower opponents in this one just in general, and I don't know, I think I was like hungry or just wanted to move on or whatever. So I'm staring at 5 mana, and I have Conclave Mentor, and I have Oran Reef Ooze in hand, and I just want to go Mentor into the Oran Reef Ooze. And I decide, even though like realistically that's like one of the only things my opponent could be holding up, like another Lightning Strike, it's like, well, you've already used 2 of them. And then I somehow convinced myself to think that like, because they've played the 1/1 adventure to kill like my X2 rather than just like clearing it to get in more damage and not effectively sacrifice the goblin, I just kind of rule out that they have this burn spell in hand, and I just get greedy and play Conclave Mentor into Oran Reef Ooze into their open mana. And as you guys would probably know, they just have the removal in response. My Conclave Mentor dies. Sure, I gain some life, but I just lose like a huge amount of value. Thankfully, my deck is insane, and I kind of managed to win anyway. I think I kind of out-top decked them. Oh, the other thing too, after that, then they had Sulphurous Blast, which is like main phase, 3 damage to everything, or instant speed, 2 damage to everything. So even though I'm in great shape, and I did actually beat a deck with 3 sweepers, against this round 3 deck with only 1 sweeper, all of a sudden, I basically just played poorly, and now I'm like cooked. I just keep blocking these goblin tokens from the Hordling Outburst, and I get punished. Well, mainly the second time. The first time, I think it was reasonable, but anyway. So surprisingly close one, considering what was going on. And then game 3, we we did some disgusting things to them in game 3. Game 3, they didn't have mana up, and we went for the same thing, Conclave Mentor into Oran Reef Ooze. And then I want to say next turn, or something like that, we went like Metastatic Evangel into Basking Broodscale in response to the trigger of the Evangel level up the Broodscale. And so now we are proliferating, putting counters everywhere. We have, but it's not just one counter that we're putting everywhere as well. So now, like, we put 2 counters on the Conclave Mentor, and then we put 2 counters on the Broodscale. Anyway, all you need to know is there were like +1/+1 counters everywhere, and we just absolutely crushed that one. That one was sick. So this deck was broken. It might need to be nerfed. Don't worry about it. I wasn't really looking to play this cube because I've played this cube multiple times already. That said, I was very happy with this cube. I do always like the Budget Synergy cube. I also like Soph, the designer, and you know, it's one of those key differences, like between your kind of maybe typical sort of random limited cards environment where it's like I don't know, you can wind up with decks that feel kind of good stuffy in like a really synergistic environment and just like don't play very well, and they're just awkward, or the curve is weird or whatever, versus something like this where it's like the curve is pristine, the synergy is on point, you know, like everything about this is nice. So definitely liked playing this cube, even though I'd done it a few times before. All right, so now to reflect on my record. So I was 2-1 into 2-1 into 3-0. and I think 6-3 was the minimum record needed to make top 64 for day 2. But I was 7-2. So I'm feeling pretty good, 7-2. We've got our 1 trophy, we've got our two ones, whatever. I went there with 2 of my friends, Springbok, aka Varun, and my friend Jackson, and those freaking guys crushed it, man. They both had 2 trophies at the end of day 1. Springbok is undefeated on day 1. He's 8-0-1. He's like in the top 10 or whatever out of 270 people. So he's not just making top 64, he's making top 10. Yeah, so we did make it into top 64. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a wrinkle, and that wrinkle was I'm not allowed to play the top 8. The other side of that, the thing that's not unfortunate, is I am commentating the top 8, as you guys have probably heard me talk about many times because I was so excited for it. So that means that I am not allowed to win my top 64 pod, or at least if I do, it doesn't matter because the person who's in the finals gets to go anyway. So we look at the top 64 cubes and kind of unanimously, and this is again Springbok and Jackson and me, and we kind of realized there's nothing we really are that excited about for top 64, or at least the ones that we are excited about, there aren't very many of them. For instance, Springbok he's all about the gut cube, man. And unfortunately, because he's already played the gut cube, he can't play it again. Because, yeah, there are no repeats allowed in top 64. And so what ends up happening is all 3 of us wind up in the same pod. So we all wind up in the Zonal Synergy cube. And that means that unfortunately only one of us can make it to top 8. Man, I would have loved it if either Springbok or Jackson, or ideally both of them, make top 8. Can you imagine that from my perspective? Both of my friends have 2 trophies on day 1. I'm not allowed to commentate top 8, and then my friends like meet, potentially in the finals of top 8. That would be like so sick. That would be the sickest thing ever. But unfortunately, it didn't work out like that. So let's talk about the draft with this deck. In the one match I did play, because spoiler alert, I only played 1. So I started with, you guys will be proud of me. Pack 1, pick 1, I start with Malcolm, the 2-1 flash flyer that loots when it deals damage to them. And then I think, gosh, I don't remember. Oh, I took some like commander card or whatever that like makes a 4-1 menace or something. Pack 1, pick 2. So like look at me. Yes, we're looking at the classic finite Boros, but like I went blue card into black card, and then it wasn't until I think what happened was 3rd pick. Oh, wait a minute. I don't quite have my screenshot of my deck right here. Because then I think what happened is 3rd pick. Yeah, it was like some 3-mana card with like an adventure that's like make a 4-1 menace, and then it's like 2-mana card, and you can do like a recurring nightmare, except it exiles a creature you have in play to reanimate something like that. Anyway, so I actually took, I want to say, I don't know if it was 3rd pick, but it was quite early. I took Lava Coil, and one of the reasons I took the Lava Coil as highly as I did is because going into the cube, it said that there was, like the primer said, there was very little interaction in the cube. And I'm thinking, okay, well, if this is the Zonal Synergy cube, and, there are tons of haymakers and whatever everywhere, interaction that not only kills something, but exiles it, so they can't obviously get it back from the graveyard, seems like it's going to be pretty premium. So I took that, and then I want to say I took, like, Robber of the Rich, and then it just felt like red was pretty open. And then I, like, wheeled a bunch of red cards. Anyway, so it was basically the same story as this one, right? Where it's like, yes, I started with a blue card and a black card, whatever, but in the other one, but Boros was wide open. Selesnya was also wide open. Exactly, Aramath. In the Zonal Synergy cube, we've drafted a deck with no synergy. Don't worry about it, though. Anyway, so this one was perfect because neither of the people next to me moved into Selesnya, right? Whereas this one, the person next to me did move into Gruul. I don't even think Gruul was open, man. I don't understand how you move into that there, but whatever. This one, we just had a blessed run, and we were just gifted this deck. This one, well, it becomes a me problem in Pack 2. That's the issue. My deck was way worse because Pack 2 sucked for me. And then this one, basically the same thing happens, where even though my deck was good, and even though it was wide open, the person I'm passing to takes like Showdown of the Scalds really highly, and now I'm competing with her for Boros. I don't know who had the better Boros deck. I honestly don't know. I mean, first of all, I wouldn't be paired against her anyway in round 1, because we weren't paired across, or we weren't across from each other, right? We were next to each other. But like, here's the thing. Oh wait, somehow my deck is wrong again, where I didn't do a very good job on this one somehow. Sorry about that. Because there's one card that's in my deck that shouldn't be, and I already missed the Lava Coil, but I also missed that I had an Arid Mesa. So my mana was actually quite nice in this one, as the mana in this cube goes, because you also have the same cycle of Molten Tributary and Wooded Ridgeline, the typed tap lands from Dominaria United. They were still in this cube, which honestly is kind of a weird thing, because they, power level wise, I don't think are a great fit for this cube. But I had Arid Mesa, Sacred Foundry, Sunbaked Canyon, Elegant Parlor. So like my mana was nice, and I had a lot of interaction too. Especially for a cube where it says interactions at a premium and there's not very much of it, right? I have a Road, Sheltered by Ghosts, Unexpectedly Absent, Lava Coil, Touch the Spirit Realm. I actually boarded in the Tweeze, and I'm going to come back to the Tweeze in just a second because it was relevant. But my deck is like, it leaves something to be desired. Again, we effectively have no synergy. I tried to do this Wild Magic Sorcerer for to keep living my best life with Cascade. Alright, see you later, Brady. The first spell you cast from exile each turn has Cascade. But unfortunately, I didn't really get a chance to do that very much, and the Cure-All was worse. So like my deck was just like, nah, it was fine. But it was not really spectacular. This card was cool. It wasn't amazing, but it was pretty important. Advanced Reconstruction. I assume the font's really tiny. So basically what it does is, beginning of your first or your pre-combat main phase, you mill a card, then you get to replay a card from your graveyard until end of turn at random. So you like effectively draw a random card from your graveyard after milling a card every turn. And then second level, whenever a card or one or more cards leave your graveyard, then you're dealing 2 damage to your opponent, and then you can like discount them, which is kind of irrelevant when you're sinking all the mana into this, but whatever. Don't need everything to be super relevant all the time. So this card is really good, right? Like I don't have Showdown of the Scalds, but this is one of my better sources of card advantage. I have this Ox of Agonis, which is also great for card advantage. The Dream actually for me was, and I didn't really get to live the Dream, but I wanted to go play this Cascade whenever you play a spell from Exile guy into Quintorius Canned, and then which has this -3 of Discover 4, which then plays a spell from Exile, and then I get to Cascade and whatever. But I was not nearly set up as well for the Cascade stuff as the Cascade Cube deck. Surprise, which, you know, that's kind of what everything is designed to do there, so that makes sense. But then the turn before I was going to be able to do this, because round 1 I get paired against Springbok with this deck. The turn before I was going to do that, he like duresses my Quintorius Canned out of my hand, so I don't get to do it. And then I like cut this later because it just did nothing. Also, the All-Fade Stalker was like really bad. I mean, it was interaction, but then like I never had a reason to warp it, and then the opponent was just like killing it and getting their dude back, and it was like, well, that sucks. So basically, I'm not sure how fun this would have been or wouldn't have been. I gotta say, Boros no synergy probably wasn't the most fun thing to be doing here. I did randomly beat Springbok, despite him being 8-0-1 on day 1. I technically would have been his first loss on day 2. Yeah, Chaos already happened. So I would have been his first loss on day 2, but because I can't make top 8, I'm scooping as soon as I get paired against him or as soon as I get paired against Jackson. It's just unfortunate for me that, like Wacky said, I didn't get to, you know, possibly defeat anyone else along the way. So game one, he absolutely trounces me. Springbok has this insane Rakdos Madness deck. It's like a well-oiled machine. There's like so much synergy. Everything is really good. It's really hard to interact with. He's drawing extra cards every turn. Everything has like Madness or Mayhem, and I'm just getting absolutely blasted. And then game two, I somehow get really lucky. I get to have this advanced reconstruction. I'm like dealing him a bunch of damage. With the second thing on here, I get him down to like 4 life, and then I like replay a card from my graveyard or whatever, and then it's something like Highway Robbery or whatever, like just something that draws me a couple cards, or maybe it was the Ox, I don't really remember, but the point is I need something to deal in the last couple points of damage. I find none other than the Kutziel's Flanker, which for the most part I've been using to gain 2 life and scry 2. Yes, his graveyard is relevant some of the time, and I could try to go after that, but in this spot where he's at 2 life, I actually get to exile my own graveyard, trigger this advanced reconstruction one more time, force a game 3. Now the game 3 is a bit scuffed. Honestly, the whole match was super scuffed, and like it was super fun, but it was hilarious because I didn't take it seriously at all and sort of forced him not to take it seriously either, because I mean, yes, it's a top 64 match, but like it's also for fun because I've already effectively scooped to him. And the people next to us, like as they're like shuffling between games, they're just kind of like looking over at us as I'm like memeing and talking about like conceding on like turn 0 and stuff. Just all this, like I'm just doing like random like goofy crap, and they're just like, what is going on over there? So thankfully, hopefully we didn't draw too much attention to us, because yeah, there definitely was some funny business going on. And speaking of funny business, maybe Springbok just keeps a hand that he otherwise wouldn't have kept in the game 3, because he like only has access to black mana. I don't really know if that's why, but I basically end up being in a really commanding board state, but then he starts clawing back and he's like killing all my dudes, and then all of a sudden there's like nothing I could do, and I'm at major risk of dying. Oh, I should also mention that because this thing is an enchantment and I'm playing against like a Rakdos Madness deck, it's not like he really has very many outs to my enchantment card advantage engine, right? But somehow we get to a spot where thankfully he's at 3 life, and I get to untap. I just get to upkeep Tweeze You, not even worry about this trigger or anything like that, and then hold priority, Tweeze on the stack, I concede. And then then that's him into top 32, obviously, because it can't be me. And then he faces the other Boros deck, the one that I passed to the person right next to me, and he loses. And that was a really rough one for him. And my friend Jackson also loses. I think he lost the first round. So unfortunately, the dream of both my friends making top 8 dies, and now none of us have made top 8. But we all had fun. I don't think anyone is like too disappointed or too discouraged, but there is one thing that I want to say, just because I feel like it's just kind of important to understand about the vibes. So the vibes are a key part of the whole event. This is a cube event. This is not your typical Magic tournament, and that means there's an expectation that the vibes are going to be better than usual. And I have to say, I'm quite happy that I wasn't live for top 8, because it forced me to be in a much better mood and potentially a much better sport than I would have been otherwise. It's like, I lose, meh, no big deal, we go on to the next one. Whereas normally it's like, oh, now I can't trophy, and it's like, oh, where am I in the standings, and like this and that, and everything's a big deal. And this time it was just like, meh, my opponent has 3 pieces of power in the Cascade Cube, I die, it's all good. Okay, round 2, my deck is terrible. I actually maybe could have won the match against the deck that ended up trophying, except I mulled a 5 on the play or whatever. Meh, all good. On to the next one. There's even like some rules stuff that happened in the Cascade Cube, which is, not a huge surprise, because this one's super hard to play with technically like correct accuracy and everything like that. So I'm just kind of letting everything roll off my back. We're just here to have fun. Nothing's a big deal, which is like the best way to play Magic, right? That's how Magic should always be, I feel like. So that's not really what it's like in top 64. I've been in, the top 64s before, and that's where like nobody's making jokes anymore. People are rarely smiling. There's very little talk except for like narrating game actions. It's like everyone is so serious and nothing is fun. So, at least we got to have a nice fun match against Springbok that's like in contrast to that. But I think unfortunately he was probably maybe just a bit rattled by the pressure or stress of trying to win in top 64 there, because his deck was insane. I don't know if it was winnable for him because the Boros deck was also quite strong, but I don't know. Who knows? But that's it for the portion about the decks. Yeah, so now to talk about top 8. And top 8 was hype. I don't think very many of you guys watched it. The coverage will be out eventually. I'll be posting that in my server once it's up. I don't know why they can't just leave the VODs up. They have to like go through and edit it all and whatever. But here's what you need to know. So I very, very badly wanted to commentate. Part of this was born out of watching other commentators, and it's not like the other commentators didn't have anything going for them, but I just wanted to have commentary that's really sort of focused on what is going on in the game, what lines are the players taking, what are they thinking about and focused on. Like, you can talk about whatever, you can talk about, I didn't say those words, Wacky, but honestly, that's why I started making content in the first place, so, here we are, whatever. So, anyway, yeah, but the problem is, even though I thought I could do a decent job of it, I'd never done it before, right? And I was nervous, and I was going to have to do play-by-play commentary, which, like, I think I would be decent at play-by-play commentary, but honestly, I think color commentary is a better fit for me, because I really like the analysis. I really like to, go deeper than, like, player A casts spell B, or, you know what I mean? I love analysis. That's a huge part of the stream, going over draft logs, bad plays I've made. This is what I'm doing right now, is analysis. This is color commentary, right? So it's play-by-play is not probably as natural for me, but thankfully, firstly, I'll just say I'm immensely grateful to Ollie, who not only allowed my cube to be in the main event, which is great, but then also said yes to me being a commentator and had some nice words to say about me as a commentator before I even commentated. So, like, I'll take all the opportunities and nice words that are handed to me. So then I get to choose somebody as my co-commentator, or like recommend someone or whatever, because Ollie wants me to commentate, but they don't have someone in mind for me to commentate with. And I'm thinking about who would be a good match for me in terms of commentary, because Ollie's trying to basically find someone with a bit of a different personality than me, like someone who can kind of balance me out, right? And I come up with Derek Gallen, who I am so glad that I thought of Derek, because it's been a while since Derek has kind of been in the Magic space. Derek is really kind of hovering on the edge or the periphery, right? Where like his cube is in the main event. He's still showing up to these cube events to say hi to everybody and have fun and all that. But like, it's not like he's, the bad boy of Magic, the rogue token. And man, it was just so awesome to do commentary with Derek. Like, we overthought it about 10 different ways and about 10 times as much as we should have. We're like talking about which one of us is going to do which role, and we're like, trying to make sure that we're on the same page for everything. And like, we're talking about studying, for me, like studying Marshall Sutcliffe, because he's like the go-to play-by-play commentator for Magic. And Derek thankfully has some commentary experience, and like we're talking about that. And anyway, we're just like overthinking it, but it's also clearly a big deal to us, and we just want to get it right. And then it's just kind of funny because in the end there wasn't like a huge number of people watching, but thank you guys. And I guess in particular, shout out to Mayhem, who was there in the chat watching. Not sure if there was actually anyone else from my server watching. Where were you guys? What was your excuse for that? But anyway, just kidding. And yeah, so we just had a blast. And the funniest thing about that was so just between top 64 and top 8, I bump into this guy. Well, actually, we're at the cafeteria. We're trying to get food at the same time. except I've ordered food before him. They call my name to say my food is ready. And he's like, huh? And he just kind of looks at me. And it's because, as you guys might have guessed, his name is also Max. And it just so happens that Max trophied his top 64 draft, which means he's going to be in top 8. But on top of that, hilarious coincidence, he's also going to be the featured drafter. And this guy, I don't know anything about him, except when I met him at the cafeteria. I mean, he's a nice guy. That's about the extent of what I know. But this guy is a crusher, man. He's got his own cube event that he runs. He top 8'd the Boston Cube Party last year, and now he trophies his top 64 draft and is into the top 8 draft. And it's hilarious. I gotta say, I think for the most part, Derek and I did a really good job with commentary. I hope so. It's hard for me to say without having been able to watch the tape back. But we made one absolutely major miss and blunder. And that was, we were skeptical of his deck. We were skeptical of this guy's deck. He didn't have almost any 2-mana creatures, but he did have pretty solid mana by the end, and he did have a good amount of cheap removal. And we were just anticipating that he was just going to have a rough go of it because he didn't have these 2-drops. And man, he freaking wins the whole tournament. So we could not have been more wrong about that. We were, really off on our commentary there. That said, for the most part, I do think the commentary was really good. Derek was on point. He caught 2 rules things that the players either missed or got wrong, which is crazy. You're not supposed to be a judge as a commentator. That's literally not what the role is about. And then I tried to catch a rules thing because I just kind of thought, well, I guess that's how things are going. And I was completely wrong. So oops, that was another miss on my part. But apart from that, we had multiple called shots about exact cards in hand. Derek quickly recognized that one of the opponents was playing a mono black deck, and then I quickly recognized that they were playing a vampire typal deck, which is sick, in a cube where I didn't even mention this part. It was a mystery cube, so nobody had access to the list. To some extent we had likened it to Chaos Draft because you're going into an environment, you have no idea what the card pool is going to look like. Your card evaluation has to be on point. You have to be dialed in, even though it's really hard to know what all you're going to see. And it was just so awesome to commentate the top 8 and watch this guy who shared a name with me take the thing down. And there were so many name puns, and we just had so much fun, and there was so much hype. And, even though, again, I don't think the commentary or whatever was perfect, I am really proud of it, especially for my first time commentating. So, all in all, amazing event. I wish I could have played a little bit more Magic, because I guess in the end I did only play 10 matches, right? The 3 matches with each of the 3 first decks, and then I dropped at 1-0 with this one. Thank you, Mayhem. I certainly tried. And I could have played out my other matches with this one, but then I was this is Boros, no synergy. I can just drop. And then I wanted to watch spectate Springbox match, and then I wanted to get food and everything, so it just kind of worked out. I didn't need to play, I don't need to play more Boros no synergy matches. I can do that for free on Magic Online. Whatever. Yes, it was super hard for us to see the cards too, man. That was so tricky. Oh well. But yeah. And also just wanted to say, Mayhem, I really appreciated the interview questions. That was one thing that was a tiny little bit of a bummer for me, because we did a winter interview, I don't know, with the Max guy at the end, and I was kind of crowded off camera, and I was far away from the microphone, so it was just kind of my face in kind of a corner, just oh, I'm here too, But thankfully, Derek had some good questions for him, Max had some good answers, and Mayhem, you had some good questions in chat as well. So I think that's it for my recap of the Boston Cube Party. I did do this other thing, which hopefully wasn't a huge blunder, but I did go ahead and say this is my favorite local cube event right there at the end of the stream. And man, it is an awesome cube event. Highly recommend all of you guys go to it sometime. You do normally, by the way, get to play more than 10 matches. I was in a particularly weird spot because I dropped from this, and then everybody else has a draft 5, right? Even if you're not in top 8, there's still free play. Sadly, my cube actually didn't fire any of the drafts on Saturday, but then Sunday it did fire twice for the free play drafts. And I haven't looked very closely yet for feedback or looked at the deck lists or whatever, but mostly I feel like I've heard good things. Also, funnily enough, after both of my friends scrubbed out of top 64, then both of them got put into my cube for the last draft of the day. So then I had some excellent spectating actually after top 8, because top 8 went super fast and then they were still grinding it out with my cube, which honestly makes sense because my cube is grindy as hell. Yeah, so I think that's everything. It was super fun. Sorry that I promised an IPA stream from Randall's and then it didn't actually end up happening. We did play some IPA, but it was super late and nobody wanted to stream, so we just ended up not doing that. Also, we drafted mostly mediocre decks. We did lose to Mayhem Strength on one of my alt accounts. Mayhem Strength had an absolute killer of a deck. So I think that'll do it. Thank you guys for watching the recap. If you're watching this on YouTube and you went to the event as well, if you have anything to say, feel free to drop a comment. Always happy when people do that. It was great to see everyone. I had a great experience with every single person I played against, every single person I sat at a table with. Everybody was nice. Hopefully made some friends. That's always kind of one of the goals for me at events like this. And hopefully maybe some people joining the Discord or my community as well. So with that, we'll sign off. So yeah, again, thanks for watching, guys. Have a good rest of your day. I'm going to turn the face cam off because, come on, we don't need this. And we'll see you guys next time.